So who got the money?
To financial institutions in Europe and other countries.
Which ones?
I don't know.
$500 billion and you don't know who got the money? Well, the Constitution says no money shall be drawn from the Treasury but in consequence of appropriations made by law.
This money is not drawn from the Treasury.
Well, let's talk about that. Do you think it's consistent with the spirit of that provision in the Constitution for a group like the FMOC to hand out $500 billion to foreigners without any action by this Congress?
Congress approved it in the Federal Reserve Act.
When was that?
Quite a long time ago. I don't know the exact date.
100 years ago.
The original act is 1914, I believe.
I don't know whether this provision was in 1914 or not, but the Federal Reserve Act was in 1913.
All right, and at that time, the entire gross national product of this country was well under $500 billion, wasn't it?
I don't know.
Is it safe to say that nobody in 1913 contemplated that your small little group of people would decide to hand out $500 billion to foreigners?
Gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. McHenry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the tune of $23.7 trillion worth of taxpayer exposure for the bailouts is quite striking.
The calculation. One very interesting exchange. Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont asking Bernanke, we have given upwards of $2 trillion to various financial institutions. You've got to tell me, where did the money go? And Bernanke simply stonewalls and says, I won't tell you.
And who got the money? Hundreds and hundreds of banks. Any bank or that has access to the U.S. Federal Reserve's discount.
Tell us who they are.
No.
Do you have to be a large, greedy, reckless financial institution to apply for these monies?
There is no subsidy. There is no capital involved. There is no gift involved. It is a collateralized, short-term liquid loan that is both over-collateralized and is recourse to the company itself. We have never lost a penny doing it.
And how can other institutions get those loans as well?
According to the law, we are supposed to be lending to depository institutions.
Let me just say this, Mr. Chairman. I have a hard time understanding how you have put $2.2 trillion at risk without making those names available, those institutions public. And we're going to introduce legislation today, by the way, to demand that you do that. It is unacceptable to me that that goes on.
I have another amendment. I have been informed that the majority plans to block consideration of this amendment, which is number 1367, regarding the transparency at the Federal Reserve. Madam President, I'd like to call up Amendment 1367.
Without objection, the clerk will report.
The Senator from South Carolina, Mr. DeMint, proposes an amendment number 1367.
Senator from Nebraska.
I make a point of order against the DeMint amendment that it's legislation on appropriations.
Madam President?
The point of order is well taken. The amendment.
I regret the objection.
The amendment falls.
The people began asking themselves, why couldn't there be an audit of the Federal Reserve?
The Fed has never once been audited. In the whole period of time, in the almost 90-some-odd years that the Fed has been around, the most powerful agency and independent agency, it has never once been audited. This is an absolute crime against the freedoms of this country.
Do you think it would cause problems for the Fed or for the economy if that legislation was to pass?
My concern about the legislation is that if the GAO is auditing not only the operational aspects of our programs and the details of the programs, but is making judgments about our policy decisions, that would effectively be a takeover of monetary policy by the Congress.
Is that your position, that this bill, if it were to be passed, would interfere directly with interest rates, setting interest rates?
If we were to raise interest rates at a meeting and someone in the Congress didn't like that and said, I want the GAO to audit that decision, wouldn't that be viewed as an interference?
I wouldn't think so. This is just reviewing it, and you can do what you want.
The Federal Reserve has never been subjected to an outside audit. And if you audit them, it's very likely that Greenspan, Bernanke, and Volcker might all go to jail.
It was announced earlier today, that there will be a hearing
on H.R. 1207, the bill to audit the Federal Reserve Bank. This will be the first independent audit in the Federal Reserve's 96-year history, and it's long overdue. Months ago, I asked the Vice Chairman of the Federal Reserve who received the $1 trillion in funds that the Federal Reserve has handed out to domestic institutions. He said, "I'm not going to tell you." And then more recently, the Chairman of the Federal Reserve, I asked him who receives the $500 billion, we're talking about $500 billion, that the Federal Reserve handed over to foreign central banks. Who did they disseminate that money to? And he said, "I don't know." $500 billion, and he doesn't know. It's long overdue. We need to audit the Federal Reserve, and I'm happy to say that we're going to have a hearing on that very soon.
Why were the bank's front men, Alan Greenspan and Ben Bernanke, all over the news saying that they were above the law?
What is the proper relationship, what should be the proper relationship between a chairman of the Fed and a president of the United States?
There is no other agency of government which can overrule actions that we take. What the relationships are don't frankly matter.
What is global government? For decades, the media denied it existed. But now they're saying, oh yes, there's going to be a global government, a new bank of the world, and we're going to pay our carbon taxes to it. What is it? It's nothing more than a private, hostile, corporate takeover of every sovereign nation on earth. And then when you look at the philosophy of these global corporate chieftains, it is one of domination of the poor, domination of the population. It is a view that human life just isn't cheap. No, human life is a negative. And so no matter what they do, they have the rationale that it's in the greater interest to get rid of more human lives.
They are so arrogant and they're so sure of themselves, they're saying, yes, we created the European Union, we created the Euro, and these are from the people of the Bilderberg. We are going to create a world bank. We're going to create a world government. They're saying it out loud and clearly.
Suddenly, across the planet, their regional front banks had been identified by sovereign populations as the illegitimate shadow governments that they are. The controllers had moved too quickly and revealed their hand. Populations around the globe were seeing through the establishment's facade, past the puppet governments, and to the global architects that were pulling their strings.
Where are the American people? Why have they lost their dignity? What is stopping them from speaking out? Why have they become little mice that follow Pied Pipers? How can they look up to these pathetic politicians?
Go sit down. I have a question for this young man. He has the right to be represented. I'm his father, and I want to talk to you face to face.
Why not a lobbyist with all kind of money to stuff in your pocket so that you can cheat the citizens of this country? So I'll leave, and you can do whatever the hell you please to do. One day, God's going to stand before you, and he's going to judge you and the rest of your damn cronies up on the hill. And then you will get your just desserts.
As the public begins to awaken to the fact that Barack Obama has cold-bloodedly betrayed the pledges he made to the American people, the establishment media and Democratic leaders have invoked the tactic of divide and conquer.
I think they're astroturf. You be the judge of carrying swastikas and symbols like that to a town meeting on health care.
An overwhelming portion of the intensely demonstrated animosity toward President Barack Obama is based on the fact that he is a black man.